Mary LaHammer here from Twin Cities PBS with Almanac with the story behind the story. And my story this week is an interview with the governor. I'm the only reporter who got it, and I got it at an event that was technically closed press, and I'm going to tell you how that happened. Every day we get the governor's schedule, and there are many events on it, and some of them are open press, where the press are invited to come, and then some of them they just tell us what he's doing, where he's going to be, who he's going to be with, and those are mentioned as closed press. We decided it was worth the gamble. So at the Capitol on this particular day, the House had the day off for a holiday. The Senate just had one hearing, and I'll talk about this later. It's this marathon hearing with lots and lots of bills, and I knew I could pay attention maybe from afar, and we actually had another reporter covering that. So I decided, let's go off-site. Let's see if we can at least get footage of the governor, because the location's very interesting. I thought that would be worth it for that. And I thought maybe there's a chance the governor will come over and chat. I've known the governor for a really long time, since literally the time that he entered politics, from when he first ran for office, all the way back in southern Minnesota, when I was hearing from sources down in this first congressional district that there was this high school teacher football coach who was challenging an incumbent member of Congress, and they said, get down here, there's this debate, you want to come see this debate. And I remember showing up for the debate, and this guy named Tim Walz challenging a very experienced, very smooth member of Congress, and him not really overthinking it, and in this debate showing up and doing quite well, which would surprise some people to think today about the vice presidential debate, which was not a strong performance for him. I think as he's gotten on in his political career, he has come to like debating less and less. At the beginning, when he was new and raw and kind of real and just did quite well in his initial very first debate, knocking off a longtime incumbent in a Republican district when he won a seat for Congress as a Democrat. So anyway, I was there at that debate, covered him in Congress for a long time, and covered obviously his 2 terms as governor. So I kind of know his instincts, and I know he is gregarious. He likes to talk. I know him well. So I thought, gosh, let's just show up and see if there's a chance he'll talk. I know I wanted the footage because the location was the Angry Catfish Bicycle Shop. This is where a worldwide memorial started. Tens of thousands of cyclists across the globe participated in a memorial bike ride for Alex Pretti, of course, who was shot and killed in Minneapolis during the immigration action here. 200 to 300 events were held in 12 to 15 countries in nearly every U.S. state. That was in January of 2026. The main event in Minneapolis drew thousands of participants and a lot of different rides of solidarity all across the country and all across the world. And Governor Walz was there meeting. He told us later that he had a chance to go to the VA where Alex Pretti was a nurse, but he hadn't gotten to this location yet. And I thought, okay, the footage will be worth it. I was working on a story, you'll see in a moment. The story was really about how the issue of immigration has not gone away in Minnesota and in Minnesota politics. There are several bills working through the legislature, and I'll be covering that. But I thought, boy, there's a chance the governor just won't be able to resist coming over and talking to us. If we set up a camera, safe distance, we know the law that we don't go into a private business or even a parking lot. We set up on public sidewalk, and the governor's staff, not just one, but 2 different communications people reached out and said, this is a closed press event. We're not going to be doing a scrum. That's what we call it when the governor comes out and talks. And I said, yep, I understand. I get it. I just thought it might be worth getting the visual. I played it very low key. Well, the governor comes out, waves, then he walks over, and he explains what he was doing and why this was a meaningful location. So you'll get to see that, and I'll chat with you a little more afterwards. Hi, Governor. Governor Walz visited Alex Pretti's favorite bike shop in memory of the man who was killed almost 2 months ago by federal officers in the streets of Minneapolis.
I said, I just came down here to say thank you. This was kind of the spot that organized around Alex and the ride. And they gave me an end cap that people had made that has the Minneapolis 2026. And I heard from friends of mine in Europe who heard about this ride, and it was big. I think they just kind of embodied the spirit we were feeling at the time, so I hadn't got a chance to get down here. People are still trying to figure out how to heal.
In D.C., the new Homeland Security nominee was asked about calling Pretti a deranged individual who came to cause max damage.
Those words probably should have been retracted. I shouldn't have said that, and as Secretary, I wouldn't. The investigation is ongoing, And there is, like I said, there's sometimes going to make a mistake, and I'll own it.
The governor's new revised budget includes assistance to businesses impacted by Homeland Security's immigration action in the state.
Metro Surge was not only an attack on our human rights, our constitutional rights, it provided ample opportunities for the country to see the moral injury that was put on to Minnesota, but we're left to pick up the pieces. And the costs are in the hundreds of millions of dollars. And so we're proposing some forgivable business loans in there, specifically aimed at those that were hurt worst by Metro Surge.
So far, most Republican leaders have been reluctant to support the idea.
Growth in rural Minnesota is going to be hurt by that so much. And yet the governor is selecting a very small group of people that he wants to help out in downtown Minneapolis and St. Paul primarily. And the reality is, this is a much broader issue going across the state. And for the governor to do this, again, is a little bit of a slap in the face to most Minnesotans out there.
Wouldn't rural communities be eligible for it who were affected? There are high immigrant populations in rural Minnesota.
Look at where primarily the dollars are going to be directed. It's going to be two counties for the most part. It's going to be Hennepin County and Ramsey County. They're going to take up the lion's share of the funding once again.
So the best way to experience Minneapolis is by foot.
In a new tourism ad for the city of Minneapolis, Mayor Jacob Fry features the city's famous weather extremes and the political activism the world saw.
In Minneapolis, we stand up for all of our neighbors, and we can't wait to welcome you.
At the Capitol, it's crunch time with bill deadlines to clear committees and spring break coming up at the end of next week.
We have this truncated timeline, deadlines are coming up, so you kind of just have to throw spaghetti at the wall and see what'll stick. In this case, I think you're asking the right questions.
Representative Tabke from Shakopee had the closest election that went to a recount in the diverse suburb we featured in A Race to Watch. He's been outspoken about the impact of Operation Metro Surge in his community. His bill would have protected people's private license plate data after immigration agents used the info against Minnesotans.
There being 7 ayes and 7 nays, the motion does not prevail and the bill does not advance.
We found this issue because of Operation Metro Surge, but then it quickly grew into something that was much, much bigger and broader and wider than that as to a massive data privacy breach.
I watched in horror as the two vehicles driven by federal agents pulled up in front of my house.
I was absolutely enraged that an armed federal agent had taken this blatant act to try to instill fear and intimidate me.
When I asked if they were leaving because the surge was apparently ending, the interaction quickly became hostile. They began berating me and mocking community members who had been observing their activities.
And the genesis of the immigration action was supposed to be rooting out fraud. Senate Democrats announced their plan.
It is incumbent upon us to commit to the vigilance necessary and oversight to take the reports that we get from the legislative auditor, signals that we're getting from inside the agencies, and eventually what we get from the Office of Inspector General seriously.
This is not a left or a right issue. This is a right or a wrong issue.
We need to invest in our technology if we consider these programs important, and we do, and we want to fight fraud, and we do.
We now have all 4 caucuses on board. We've got the governor on board. Everybody wants the OIG.
That would be news to me. I think maybe we're all on board with the concept of an OIG, but how that OIG looks and operates in effect. 3 of the 4 caucuses are on board. The House Democrats still have their own ideas about what they want to see.
Mary LaHammer back with you with a little bit more about the calendar now at the legislature. I mentioned there earlier that deadlines are now hitting, and that means the pace really changes at the Capitol, and it's kind of do or die time for most bills. Now, there's always an exception to the rule. We always say nothing's ever dead. You can always revive a major issue and tack it on and move it along on an emergency. But for most bills now, by next week, they have to clear a committee to really have a viable path forward. And so What we saw is a marathon Senate Judiciary hearing. Again, the House took a day off, and lawmakers will be going home at the end of next week for their Easter break. I will be talking about more about the calendar because that is a long break for that typical kind of mid-session break. And then it is typically kind of the sprint to the end. May 18th is the end of session. I had a trusted longtime lobbyist say for the first time that he actually thought session could end early. I've only seen that happen once before, and the interesting circumstance on that one was when a leader was running for governor, not just one leader, but two leaders. That was when Roger Moe and Tim Pawlenty, the leader of the Senate, the leader of the House, a Republican and Democrat, were each running for governor, and they did end session, go home early. This was a little bit of a different theory. Yes, House Speaker Lisa Dameth is running for governor. That's one factor, but this lawmaker also said because of the tie in the House, and this lobbyist said because of the tie in the House, that it's impossible right now to get anything done, and we're seeing committee after committee, bill after bill die on a tie vote. So unless things really change after the spring break coming up in the House, unless things can change, the House is just kind of stuck in gridlock and very few things are moving along, and that might create a push to just go home early. This person was thinking maybe in April, if the House is still just staring at each other, the House decides to adjourn, sine die, go home permanently, and say, you know, we just couldn't get anything done, and it's time to go home and campaign because all 201 lawmakers are up for re-election, and a lot of lawmakers are retiring. A lot of lawmakers are also seeking higher office, and they will be eager to start campaigning. So it'll be interesting to see if they really do stay in all the way through the end of session, May 18th, or whether in April folks start getting squirrely and want to head home. What we do know is that Marathon Senate Judiciary Committee, wow, they went through about 50 bills. I'm just going to give you a little sense dealing with corrections officers, safe at home, licensed juvenile and adult community-based residential care, Bureau of Criminal Apprehension, grants to local law enforcement, resuscitation training, requirements under the Human Rights Act, court notice restitution, child sexual abuse provisions, Commissioner of Corrections, substance abuse care, anti-scale fencing, pedestrian doors, criminal penalties for concealing a dead body, benefits clarifications for community corrections employees, criminal penalties increase for impersonating a police officer. Now that bill specifically has to do with the shootings of Senator Hoffman and Speaker Hortman. You remember that the assassin in that case was impersonating an officer, which is already a crime, but this enhances the penalties. That's a really interesting one. Another dealing with insignia for emergency vehicles sold to the public. Again, that person was not just dressed as a police officer, but also had a vehicle pretending to be a police officer. Other bills, domestic abuse definitions, crime of violence definition, pet shop prohibition from selling cats and dogs, so no more pet shops, for-profit acquisitions of nursing homes and facilities, standard for rent utility payments, dentistry profession licensure, court permission to stay certain writs of recovery, cause of action violations for civil rights, Bureau of Criminal Apprehension, use of force investigation, civil arrest for people attending court proceedings, civil actions for a person for failure to render aid in certain situations. I think that one might be related to both of the immigration actions when officers on the scene did not immediately render aid for Renee Good and Alex Pretti. I think that one specifically related to that. Another one, somebody concealing their identity in public. So again, and that's related to law enforcement, specifically for the immigration action, the use of wearing a mask and related to that. Limiting school site, so school safety, another big one, child care center access. And right now I am only about halfway through. So really, really busy committee schedule as lawmakers start hitting their deadlines and we start hitting the break. And then after that, it's maybe the sprint until the end of May. Reminder, this is not a budget year. Even though the governor released his supplemental budget, it doesn't have to pass. Lawmakers don't have to balance the budget. Typically a bonding year, they passed a bonding bill not that long ago, so they don't have to do a bonding bill. They don't have to do a budget. This year could just be about politics because they're all headed to the campaign. So continue to watch Almanac and Almanac at the Capitol for the latest.